All right, well, welcome everybody. This is our December Bend Utilities Public Advisory Group meeting. This is the last one of the calendar year, so it's exciting, it's fun. I know we're here somehow. We've gotten through a full year of great conversation. A little tradition for this group is to take this December meeting and do an annual review. We had mentioned that we were going to maybe bring the stormwater team back. We're going to give that more time in January, so still on our plan moving forward. But today we're really going to take the time to do a little reflection on what we've heard from this group over the course of the conversations, what takeaways and what actions the city is taking based on that input. Would love to hear anything from the UPAG members that are your takeaways, kind of thinking back to the conversations we've had over this year. And then also look forward into 2025 and anything else that's a question you still have on your mind or a topic that particularly interests you, and take note of all of that. So wanted to, I think a couple more folks came into the room. We wanted to maybe just do a quick around the room, I think, set of introductions here because we have a little more time. And if you want to maybe mention for UPAG members in particular, if you are connected to an organization or a particular kind of interest related to water, maybe bring that forward. I know not all of us get to rub shoulders regularly, and so hearing a little bit about kind of your special professional interest in water is helpful for the group, just to know what the expertise is in the room. And maybe Lori, do you want to kick things off in the conference room?
Okay. Well, everybody knows me. I'm Lori from the city of Bend, but we'll go over here to Bronwyn.
Hi, everyone. Bronwyn Mastro. I'm a landscape architect with Bend Park and Recreation District. So our interest in water is that we use and manage a lot of it.
Yeah.
I'm Kristen Reidelberger. I'm with Central Oregon Land Watch. I'm the Associate Program Manager for the Cities and Towns program. I guess primarily coming at this from like an urban planning perspective.
Austin Samhegi, City of Bend. I work in the engineering department focusing on water and stormwater capital projects. So yeah, I'm helping lead the stormwater master plan, and then I'm absolutely obsessed with water. So
Woohoo!
Passion. So.
Dan Denning, Water Conservation Program here at the Utility Department, and our focus is the implementation of water reducing strategies and programs, and working with our stakeholders.
Awesome.
And our room cameras are a little
right?
funky. Yeah, that's all that's in the room. I'm watching our cameras do crazy things, so a lot of the time you might just see the whole room. I don't know what's going on. They're creepy. but go ahead to online, Aubrey.
The beauties of technology, right? Matt, do you wanna start?
Yeah, sure. So Matt Tipton with Central West Engineering, located in Bend. I lead our municipal engineering pursuits, and sitting in for Tom Headley, who's been at the table for quite a while now. Seems like most of our projects involve some storm. So that's my reason for being here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Mike, we're just doing a quick short introductions of everybody in the room and kind of refreshing what your interest in water is. So just as a heads up, I'll let you go last here of our online group. Stephanie.
Turn on my mic. Hi, Stephanie Washer with Riso Architecture. My interest in water is primarily just based on our projects, residential and commercial projects, and then also just how the water is actually being dealt with in my neighborhood as well through my HOA.
Thanks, Stephanie. Brian?
Yep, Brian Wilkinson. I'm a principal engineer with AKS here in Bend. Everything that our interest in water is everything we design and do and manage revolves around water in some way, so particularly stormwater.
Awesome. And Pablo?
Hi, everybody. My name is Pablo Martos. I work for DEQ. I'm the Municipal Stormwater Program Coordinator. So I deal with the MS4 permit, and my concern is stormwater as it relates to water quality for the receiving waters.
Thanks. And I know, Pablo, you got to hop in on another meeting earlier this fall. So hopefully this is a fun one to listen in on. Mike? Looked like you dropped out and then you popped back in. Hopefully your connection is okay. Do you want to introduce yourself, Mike, if you can hear me?
No,
Maybe not.
looks like we got
Okay.
an audio problem maybe for Mike.
These pesky
He's trying.
pesky IT.
He keeps sticking things in his ears. Mike, can you hear us?
Not quite yet. We just wanted to take a second to refresh kind of what everybody's interest is, to recognize all the expertise, both community members in Bend, but also a lot of professional expertise that is in the room here. And it's one of the things that I really appreciate, getting a chance to listen in on what everybody has to share and the different perspectives in the room. I think it's really valuable. So just wanted to give a little bit of space to hear from everyone. Mike's maybe
And
still
hopefully
getting
Mike
connected.
Zabo will be able to hear us shortly. Otherwise, Mike's a landscape architect.
Awesome. Okay, so real quick on the slides. So here today, last calendar meeting of December. Agenda, what we have in store is to look back at 2024, then look forward at 2025, and want to kind of close out today hearing from everybody in the room, any reflections, insights, curiosities, what stands out to you as a UPAG member, what you're looking forward to for next year. So that's our meeting in a nutshell. We did want to just kind of reset a little bit on purpose of this group, and maybe it's time for a new name. So Lori, do you want to explain this one?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if it's time for a new name or not, but we changed the name of our department. We're no longer the Utilities Department. We're now the Water Services Department, which is actually a much better name. It actually better describes what we actually do. But I was also thinking, like, WSAG? That's WSPAG? That's not a good acronym. So I don't know if anybody has any brilliant ideas for a new acronym if we take out utilities and or water services. I don't know. This is not an end of the world thing, but I just thought it would be a fun thing to throw out there, and it's an opportunity to introduce to everybody that you may, just so you don't get confused, you may hear out there, you're used to hearing utilities and you may start hearing water services. Same people, same group, better name.
Lori, is it specific to all water or just stormwater?
It's all water. So it's what has been the utilities department, which is water, drinking water, sewer, storm, right? We're all water services now instead of utilities. So just rebranding, I guess.
Yep. Okay.
I think engineering changed their name too, because it used to be
Engineering Infrastructure Planning Department, and now we're engineering.
Look at that simplicity.
Pretty cool, huh? As soon as we can change design, clarification, request, clear to just RFI and what everybody else calls everything else. So we're working on the acronyms, but
You could use WAG.
There we go.
That would be a good one.
that's not bad.
The WAG.
Very applicable to stormwater too.
Yeah, right? Okay, so got one
And we
idea
have-
out there, the WAG.
And this is one folks can noodle on. If you get inspired here before the end of the meeting, feel free to pop in an idea. You may or may not have any kind of affection for the name UPAG, so whatever your pleasure or inspiration here is great. But wanted to, this group has kind of a unique role with the city of advising staff. There are a few folks, we have a representative from the Environment and Climate Committee, which is council appointed. This particular group is advising staff, so it's in a little different, unique role, and grew out of, to some degree, the stormwater focused group with Windy Eddy, and a few of our members were part of that group.
Yeah.
And then now we're kind of embracing more aspects of water.
Yeah, one water approach. So this is kind of unique to the city, and I am so grateful to have this group as a sounding board, because our other formal committees that are appointed by council, there's none that really covers water topics. And I mean, the closest might be Environment and Climate Committee, but they tend to be very focused more on energy consumption. And so this opportunity to have a group that we can say, hey, what do you think about this, has been super helpful to us. And I really appreciate it. But I also recognize there could sometimes be some confusion about this group, which is why we call it a group and not a committee, versus a council appointed committee. So you're not advising council, you're advising staff in this department. But I think it's great. You get to see kind of some of the inner workings on some really important topics. So much appreciated.
All right, and the other just kind of big picture reset item we wanted to mention, last meeting, November, we had danced a little bit with the idea of maybe changing our timing. But I think at this point, the plan is to stick with first Wednesday, 11 to 12:30 and hybrid, moving into at least the spring meetings for 2025. And then we may have a few new faces. We don't necessarily have any today on the line, but we may have a few folks who are jumping in as alternates or new faces moving forward. And so just a reminder on communication, we always post meeting materials to bendoregon.gov/UPAG. So meeting recordings and so forth are there if you miss a meeting or if you have somebody who's interested in the materials that were covered. Lori, anything else on format that you wanted to mention?
I don't think so. Yeah, we decided to just leave it as it is. It seems to generally work. We have one member, Amy Jo, at the OSU Extension, who has difficulty about half the year making this time because she has another meeting, but we're working with her to add another person from Extension so that we can cover the bases there. In fact, the person who works on like Firewise type stuff, which I think is really relevant to us, is the connection between Firewise and WaterWise, for instance. So other than that, I think we're doing pretty well. So I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's going to be our proposal. I did go with Bronwyn's idea if I bought a little less food this time. But if more of you start showing up, I'll buy more. So I think that's it. I'm trying to think, Dan, we were talking to some folks about, the other group we've had a little difficulty with attendance on has been, we've had a representative from Polish Development, and it kind of dropped off the radar screen. So we're trying to recruit maybe from, I don't know, you had some ideas, Dan, about what group?
Yeah, we had just some turnover in the representation from Polish. And so we're looking at other developers. Adair Homes, I think, was an option. Just get some of the development community in here.
Yeah.
That'd be helpful.
So if anybody has any ideas of somebody they think that would be willing to participate and show up, I think that's a bit of a hole. I mean, I'm glad to have folks like Brian here who can help represent some of those folks. I know you guys do a lot of work for Polish, but
yeah,
I'll
think of somebody like that too. Yeah, I think Trevor's not there anymore, so that's probably why he's not has not showed up. So I'll put some thought into who might be a good person for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, Aubrey, I got it.
Okay. We're ready to dive into the look back. So I'm going to bring the slides back up here. One of the things that we've heard from the group is interest in how the city is using the advice the UPAG has provided through all these meetings and great conversations. So that's what we're going to take a little time to do today. But big picture, thinking about our conversations in 2024, they really fall into three general categories: the water conservation program, especially the turf replacement pilot that Dan got started this year and shared some information with this group before that pilot in the summertime went into, got implemented, and then after the summer season. We've also spent a lot of time on the stormwater quality and groundwater conversation with the underground injection control standards and drill holes and dry wells and all of that fun conversation with Elizabeth. And then we've spent a lot of time around the stormwater master plan, and we'll continue that into early part of next year. So kind of three general focus areas where we've spent time throughout this year. And I think we're going to hear from staff takeaways and insights, but also just want to put this question out there to the group. If there's something related to any of these three categories or something else that you stands out to you from being involved in this group over the course of the year, we're curious for your takeaways here as well. So I think, Dan, you are first up.
All right, excellent. So good morning, everybody. It's been a pleasure having these meetings with folks this past year. We've had a lot of good conversation, lots of good ideas presented. Unfortunately, we only have, so much time to implement them all, but a few of the items that we were able to kind of take away and accomplish or make some headway on this year. A big piece, I think, when we started out was like the communication aspect of kind of making a switch in how we talk about, just our regulatory programs, but also our incentive programs, and really increasing participation in those programs, to realize the full effect or the full conservation potential. And so, highlighting the goals and the community involvement in these programs and things that the community can work towards was one of the pieces suggested. And so we are currently working on a larger, as we made our name shift to water services, we're also looking at kind of like a holistic change in communication package through a communications plan to really take some of those ideas and put them into some digital media and print media and things that we can utilize for promotion in our program and as a utility or as a water services department now. So that's going to be a big effort. We're hoping to have some of that work, crossing our fingers, like spring, summer, but it is a big effort. And so that is one area we are making small steps and advances in, though.
But this is like a new version of a marketing campaign.
Correct. Yep. So this will be everything from branding, imagery, anything you'll see from us with our programs, from billboards to TV to radio, really highlighting the goals and the importance of what the community can do.
I could see bringing to this group maybe like a couple of options. I've been really pushing on the idea. It's like, how do you get people's attention with all the stuff they're bombarded with? And like, do we need to use more humor, for instance? Or, is it, actual pictures versus graphics and things like that? So that's what we hope to get some help from some folks.
Yeah, so if that's something this group would be interested in talking about, and we have some of those kind of draft materials.
Yeah, maybe late.
The more input, the better. It could be our sounding board.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be fantastic. The right-of-way landscape code, I know we were talking about that last year. Actually, talking about impacts to development, takeaways on what our plans were for having streamlined versions with, pre-approved templates versus, to kind of help people meet our new code requirements and kind of lessen the burden or the impact to everyone and have, more water-wise development here in Bend. So that was adopted June 20th this past summer and went into effect just last month, November 1st. We're starting to see some applications where this would apply, but there is like a moratorium for some like pre-approved land use applications on bigger subdivisions. So kind of juggling the realities of development and implementing something like this, but also seeing some progress where it is being applied and we're working out, this new process and those kinks. And
I think one of the things that's important too is we're going to try to figure out how to get the word out about this. Is there's people that will be now required to use the new right-of-way landscape code. So a new application coming in the door, no more grass in the right-of-way, basically. But that doesn't mean that anybody who's already like been in the door for a year or two couldn't still implement this and use these templates and all of that. And so we're gonna try to figure out how to get that word out as well. Like, even if you're not required to do it, you still can.
Yeah, I think there's lots of almost voluntary programs that are out there. The WaterSense labeled home. Yeah. The name of the other one escapes me. ResNet, I think, is another program where it's kind of a voluntary based program for the developer to take advantage. They can highlight, the benefits of the homes that they're building, the water and energy efficiency. So we've thrown around ideas of maybe going to some developers and just trying to talk about maybe the city could support some of that and highlight these developments that wanted to go down this pathway. So still working that angle, but hopefully that's something that we can get going here this summer as well. Let's see, what are the other big things? I think definitely the help on application processes, program requirements, all the things that we've kind of bounced off this group, developing some of our new incentive programs and new conservation efforts has been super helpful. So expertise from contractors about how they could take advantage of these programs, and how we can get the incentive into the end user, the customer's hand versus like a property manager or someone, so that the end user can actually see the benefit of these incentive programs. That's been something that's been helpful and that we've implemented in this winter. We're going to talk about introducing a low income component, some targeting of high water users, and adapt our programs a little bit to see the water savings, but also to serve each part of the community. So that's been another helpful aspect of these meetings for us.
And I think we heard pretty clearly from everybody at the last meeting, focus first on highest water savings, but then also consider other things like low income.
Yeah, the reality is at the end of the day, this is water funding, and that's our job. We need to see the fruits of our labors and see those water reductions to meet our goals for the master plan. But we also don't want to exclude anyone, who might want to participate. So balancing act there, but it's been helpful getting that direction, just reassuring us that we're doing things correctly. And then the input on focused areas for proposed businesses. That's something that staff is working on right now, kind of diving into our commercial customer class, which is pretty muddled. We've got a lot of different types of businesses here in Bend, hotels with restaurants and, landscape. We've got even some private dwellings above some commercial businesses that are food service. So really disseminating that, kind of normalizing some of those commercial trends. So one of the things we're looking at is business licensing, looking at our subcategories of commercial customers, basing a lot of it off of what CalWEP's doing in California with, I think they've got 19 classifications of commercial customers that they're going to have to start reporting on. So this will all tie into, that commercial sector as we build like mixed use commercial, a lot of high density mixed with, businesses and kind of mini strip malls. It's going to be really important for us to figure out how to normalize that water use. So maybe sub-metering, maybe some other discussions there too, to try to pull that data out. But yeah, I think did I miss anything, Lori?
I think you did good.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had a lot of great discussions, and it has helped us to be able to get some input on does this seem right?
Yeah.
Any thoughts from UPAG members on the water conservation topics we've covered this year? Anything that stands out or was especially interesting?
And we will after we do this presentation, we have time to also have an interactive discussion, Aubrey, about what more would you like to hear? Are there things you don't understand and we should explain better? All that type of stuff too. So this isn't your only chance to raise your hand.
I did see there's a bullet on adding more weather stations, so data collection also in the mix there. All right, let's move over. I think, Lori, are you taking this one on stormwater quality and groundwater?
This is me. Yeah, I think everybody knows Elizabeth's on maternity leave. She had a little baby girl at the beginning of November, and so I'm doing 2 jobs for a while until she'll return in March. But yeah, we went over a lot of stormwater regulatory things over the course of the year as well. You'll remember we've had a couple of discussions about erosion control, and we had new standards that were put into place November 1, which was meeting a deadline in our municipal stormwater permit. And it was basically a requirement to apply erosion control to more and smaller parcels. And so now everything that disturbs 5,000 square feet or more, which we just defined as a 5,000 square foot lot or more, now needs to have a more formal erosion control process. Everybody's responsible for making sure dirt doesn't go into the street and out into the storm drain system, but as far as like a permitting type process, those are in place. We really appreciated input on templates. So our focus for these small single family developments was we don't want them to have to necessarily hire an engineer and produce a formal plan for these small lots. So we developed a template, and the way it's working now, and this was also, we used your input on this, is those who are coming in for these small lots, they're given the template, they have to sign the bottom of it saying, yes, I'm going to do the things on this template. They upload that into our city view system. They have to submit photos of these measures in place, like a photo of the driveway with the gravel, or a photo of inlet protection or things like that. If those photos are satisfactory, we do not trigger there's no permit fee, and we don't trigger an inspection. And we are required to have 1 inspection per site at a minimum under our permit, and we're saving that for the end, for the stabilization at the end. But the way it's set up is that they have to submit those photos, and we check that off before they can get their first building inspection, which is usually their foundation inspection. So that's kind of holding people's feet to the fire on erosion control, and then they'll have to get a sign off at the end of their project. Since that just started November 1, I don't have a lot of information to share, because most people coming in the door starting November 1, it's usually like a 60 to 90 day process to get your permit and start going. So next couple of months, we'll kind of see. Hopefully we've done a good job with education. We also had discussions this year about illicit discharges and really trying to focus our outreach, figuring out how to get to different types of businesses and the potential for non-stormwater discharges to get into the stormwater system, whether it be a pipe that goes to the river or UICs, like dry wells that go to the groundwater. And we contracted with an organization called EcoBiz, who DEQ does a lot of work with. So we had them here starting in May, and they conducted, I've got some data up there, they conducted outreach to 30 different automotive, landscape, and downtown restaurant businesses. That was based on mailing out interest cards to folks. And then over the next year, we're going to look at, I think, so they have a whole certification program for automotive and landscape businesses where you can, if you agree to be certified, a representative from DEQ and a representative from EcoBiz will go visit that business, walk through a checklist with them, walk around their businesses, not from a punitive sense. And if they meet certain standards, like, oh, they have a spill kit and, things like that. They can be certified as an eco-biz business, and they get, a sticker and a sign. But I'm thinking we may need additional incentives for businesses to want to go to that extra amount of effort. So that'll be a discussion point over the next year. Let's see. And then, and the downtown business one was focused, if people remember, on restaurants, because we had seen some activity that we suspected meant that there was maybe like pots coming from the kitchen of restaurants and going out in the alleyways. And so we added them as well, just from an informational education standpoint. So hopefully we'll see some benefits from that as well. And then, of course, we talked a couple of different times about groundwater protectiveness, that we did a groundwater protectiveness demonstration report with the help of our consultant team from GSI. And based on that and your input, we're working on updates to our development standards for new dry wells. So it'll actually be more kind of geographic based now, which was some of the input we got. Like, yes, if you can make standards a little easier for people in some areas, let's do that. But if we have areas where we're more worried about it, like where there's perched groundwater table, or it's within the 2-year time of travel zone of a drinking water well, let's keep those more tight. And so we'll be working on those in the next few months. We're aiming for that being in the next round of engineering standards updates, which hopefully will be like next summer. And I think that was it. Some of the dry well and drill hole stuff also bled into the topic of the stormwater master plan that Austin's going to talk about next. Hopefully that all made sense.
One of my favorite moments on the tour that we took in June was when there was a potential spotting of a trail of something going into the drain that, the team rushed across the street to go investigate and maybe have a conversation with the property owner. It's just, the work in action was well timed. Any other thoughts from the group? Sorry, before we go into the stormwater master plan.
Picturing you guys like throwing your bodies in front of the curb.
Whatever it takes, Austin. Yeah. Whatever it takes.
Expect nothing less. Thanks everybody. Again, I just want to start with appreciation for all the good feedback we got on the stormwater master plan discussion so far, and hopefully to continue. It's hard to get people excited about stormwater, so it's very refreshing to actually be able to get into some good discussions. So really appreciate that. So a little bit of a recap of what we went over. A big part of UPAC's involvement was our visioning, and that's really assessing the values and the community goals around the stormwater management and helping set our priorities and really identifying our stakeholders and helping then shape what then the capital improvement program and ultimately the recommendations from the master plan. So we heard a lot of really good feedback, and we used that input to basically develop our first matrix of our capital improvement project, where we listed weightings and scores to different values and attributes. And then we brought that presented to UPAC, and you guys really gave us some great feedback. We made several adjustments to our weighting on that. And right now we are at basically at that next step where we're plugging in these issues and problems and data that we've been gathering and seeing how things fall out in terms of priority for these projects. I will say though, our consultant is having a little bit of a staffing challenge right now, so we are a little bit behind on our overall schedule. So I'll talk to that a little bit about what the future looks like. But with that, we were hoping to be a little more advanced by now as far as like having that list of CIPs ready to review. And then ultimately, we didn't want to burden this group with that process of reviewing every single one, but we intend to bring that final list and kind of do that gut check with everybody. And then again, kind of make sure that we're all in alignment with where we think the priority projects lie. And so on the background, we've also had a number of kind of tech memos that have been published that are ultimately going to be appendices and discussed. And with those, we have the outfall retrofits, we have the hydrological assessments, and then the climate change assessment. And with the climate change, I kind of want to touch on that for a minute. We got two really thoughtful, follow-up emails. So again, thanks to Kristen and Richard. I don't know if either of them are online, but
Kristen's right here.
oh, I'm so sorry. That's my biggest embarrassment is my failure to be able to recognize names. So I'm so sorry. But I think kind of the biggest feedback was in terms of the data and the models that we're using right now. And so I just wanted to follow up a little bit on that. What we found in our goal in the master plan of looking at climate change and data was not necessarily to provide the new data, but to take a look at what are we using? What are we using to design and design infrastructure around these storms? And we found that data is 50 years old. And that's the big message of the master plan. Hey, we have outdated data and we should have efforts to improve that. And so that's really the main extent with the master plan. And that gives us that nexus and justification to then put funding and efforts towards that. With that though, that was a little bit of the whisters that Dan and I had going on in the beginning. We've been working with Dan and some of our other flow monitoring and data groups here in the city, already playing a little bit of back and forth. So I showed them, hey, we have this tech memo that says we should get some more data. You're a data expert. What do you recommend? And with that, we're already looking at a few different weather stations and things to use. And we've been in discussions about that. And sounds like Dan's working with the Bureau of Reclamation, helping pushing that forward, start of the new year. And what we're finding is these things are totally within price range for us. And so the hopes of the master plan is basically with a little bit of back and forth, I can get kind of like a standardized recommended weather station that we know is going to get that level of quality data that could then, go to change design standards and things like that. And then hopefully, recommend that within the master plan. So either, kind of like a toolkit or, trying to bring that into a standard. And the price with that, the long-term goal is something that we could absolutely include in these large capital projects. I mean, that's barely a blip on the radar for that. But then working with water services. Working with water services for that lifetime program, right? Because that's a lot of data. And then from there, the big goal is really COSM. So we've been doing these monthly reads.
Central Oregon Stormwater Manual. So before the summer, we were doing, I think, monthly check-ins with Redmond, but ultimately in the future, we see the need for an overall Central Oregon Stormwater Manual update. So that's the long-term picture here is master plan says we need better data. We come up with this program to get the data, we get that implemented, and now we can go as Central Oregon group with these other cities to say, hey, let's look at redefining the standards in a way that's going to be incorporated by everybody. So yeah, that's really what I wanted to say there. And then I think we also I put down on that last bullet, Austin, and this was related to the input I think from Rick, was he was talking about how vegetated surface facilities what they work better over time. So as the plants grow and the soils get better, they will take up more water. And so sometimes they don't work as well at the beginning. And I'm thinking about areas of the city, particularly where there's it doesn't drain as well. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a topic also. I think it's a very interesting topic. I agree those facilities can work better over time. And so I think talking about that, having that discussion will be perfect at the time we're looking at updating standards. Should we think about somehow giving some kind of credit for vegetated facilities? Maybe they don't have to be quite as large or something, knowing that they'll get better in the future as long as there's an overflow path or something mm-hmm. like that.
Yeah, and thank you, Laura. And to that next, I'd see that as we have within here our toolkits, where we're going to come a list of different stormwater management tools and pricing and things like that to help help explain what tools are available. But then another thing we're looking at is the regional facility topic. And on that, we were looking at adding to the central core area, using that as like a case study program, where we could then, recommend some kind of high level strategies, ABC, but that's also like the next spin off hope is that with, future plans for City Hall and things down there and what that Bend Central District as a mixed use is going to look like, really trying to lead by example and like some of those creative, more vegetative alternatives out there. So yeah, thank you very much. So we're looking to, comment on that in terms of like toolkits and making sure that the drainage swales, stormwater planners and things like we saw in Newport are, in the awareness of the development community. But yeah, also looking to then take that next step forward to show like what a program could look like for real implementation. So then looking into next year, that is something I think January, February, we're slated right now. I think January, the intent was to go over the capital improvement program. And then February, we intended to talk about, sorry, Lori, what was our plan for February?
I think Aubrey actually has a slide coming up where we were going to talk about schedule, didn't we? Or like future topics, which might make this easier, Austin.
Okay.
Drainage and density, that middle bullet is the one that we were thinking would come back to the table in February.
Yes.
As part of the
Actually,
policy
two.
discussions.
So we have two. Can you bring up was one of the
Yeah.
slides the schedule?
That's the timeline, yeah.
There we go.
Okay. So, we didn't put that on February. So we actually have two policy topics. So one is drainage and density, which Austin's been talking about. The other is what we're calling level of service. And that's also really important, and it'll go to input to a rate study that will follow the master plan, because stormwater is funded primarily through people's monthly utility rates, through their utility bills. So level of service is about things like, it could be like even like the frequency of street sweeping or catch basin cleaning. It could be the level of inspections and general maintenance we do of pipes and things like that. But it's actually a really important topic, and depending on the level you want, of course, there's dollars associated with that. So those were the two policy topics for February. We were hoping in January to show you the list of draft prioritized capital, like construction projects. Sounds like we might not be there. So Austin and I have a meeting with the consultant team Friday. Mm-hmm. So we'll have more after that. There's potential we may just cancel the January meeting. I'm sure that won't make everybody sad. So we'll see, unless we're ready to flip it and talk about one of the policy topics, mm-hmm. and then push the capital to February. But January, February right now is slated for stormwater master plan topics. March and April are slated for water conservation program. There's going to be some really interesting discussions about evaluating how we're doing based on actual data versus the estimates that are in our water management conservation plan. And then using that information to refine the program. And then also Dan mentioned about developing a marketing plan and drilling into customer classes. There'll be some great opportunities for input there as well. And then May, we'll come back with more on stormwater master plan and the standards updates, like particularly the UIC updates. And then June we'll do, as I think everybody has enjoyed that we've been doing all along, which is do a tour, do some type of in-person event, which I think has really been great. And we'll see based on the stormwater master plan. And I mean, OTAC's having trouble that we all have, which is finding people. And they're down a person right now. That's pretty critical to our project. So we got to figure that out. So it could be, there's the potential for another ask next summer if a few folks wanted to get together for a subcommittee meeting. It was awesome that folks volunteered for that this last year. That was such a helpful meeting. So we'll we'll see.
Yeah, I definitely, if, I feel like the problem child, but I appreciate the summer spinoff and the involvement we did get. And I really want to make sure we give this group the opportunity to comment on the CIP list and especially that policy topic. I mean, I feel like this group really has the most collective expertise in terms of like actually getting a drainage and density kind of regional facility policy topic polished up in a way that's like actually functional. So I think we're hopefully by Friday we'll have a better understanding of what January February is going to look like. If not, I will probably try to see if anybody's available to meet outside for 1 or 2 meetings just so we can either look at those 2 topics or if nothing else like over email or something. But I really think this group, especially with the conversation leading up to it, I just want to make sure you guys have a chance to comment or have any input.
Yep. And if we need to, we could do some, focused discussion at June during the tour. Maybe if we need to, we'll make that master plan focused and stand out and point at some things and get some input that way as well. So.
Couple quick things on stormwater. Did the spacing distance between the hydrants and the dry wells ever make its way into the standards? I didn't see anything explicit in there.
I thought it did.
I was looking at location where it talks about, I guess I'm looking at 5.4 and 5.6.3. Maybe it's in the stormwater section.
Let me check on that and get back to you, Brian. My understanding was that, I know there were folks here that was really important to get that spacing figured out with hydrants and storm systems. And I
so
thought
that hydrants are available to test? Is that the
No. It's just that how much distance do you need between basically the water system and the storm system?
Yes, to be scared of like siphoning in any stormwater.
Yeah, and it was kind of excessive, the current standard. And I remember seeing that, Brian, so let me double check that it got adopted.
Yeah, I feel like it did get addressed, but I don't see it in the text. Another thing that could be helpful for this group for stormwater is really how we're dealing with stormwater around solid waste facilities. I think right now it all kind of defaults to the COSM, and the COSM, I find the COSMs being interpreted differently by reviewers and designers alike. So specifically like covered trash enclosures versus uncovered trash enclosures versus multifamily trash enclosures and commercial or industrial trash enclosures, whether you're using blind sumps or not. Loading docks are also treated a little bit differently, which I feel like, so it'd be interesting to get maybe some clarity, because I think like the COSM gives it a little bit more of a broader brush, but not very specific, especially if the city has specific things that they want.
Okay. Yeah, I remember hearing that continues to be an issue of like the trash enclosures.
That's been a 5-year conversation.
It's been, which it shouldn't be. This should not be rocket science. So I definitely have had that on my list, Brian, for when we update the COSM. But I will say that effort's, even kicking it off is like a year away, because we have to figure out funding, and we have to there's all these different jurisdictions who own that manual. And the last time it was updated under the auspices of the Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, back when Phil Chang was there, and he did that. So I did find that DEQ potentially has some funding for something like updating that manual. So that's one really positive thing. But there's a lot of coordination with that, and I'm not even sure who's the project manager. But maybe that's a topic we should look at so we are going to be doing an update of our engineering standards. We have to have something in place for our stormwater permit by next November 1st. That's related more to kind of the drainage and density topic. It's some issues around how we apply, what type of stormwater standards we apply to development in terms of like the size of the storm, particularly for water quality, how and when we allow there to be regional versus on-site management of stormwater. But given that schedule, there is potential we could talk about creating something about trash enclosures at the same time to go with that standards update. So I'll put that on
Yeah.
the list.
Yeah, I just find that that's one where there seems to be some confusion and not
Okay.
a ton of direction that kind of comes up. So it would be
Okay.
good to, from a consistency standpoint, right, and direction, to hit that a little bit more head on.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on your list, Brian, of things that you're kind of interested in
Yeah, you're rolling.
adding to the docket?
I'll be honest with you. I don't like the idea that all non-potable water should be treated as sewer. That does create some issues for crossings and stuff where where you're treating, say, a non-potable irrigation line or even a fire service line as a sewer line. That's not the way the state law is written. That's just the way it is for the city code. So I don't know. I mean, it's very explicit in the state statute that sewer means sanitary, but in the policies, it's all any non-potable water is treated as if it's sewer. So, water.
That's an interesting question. We have to compare that also to our, particularly our UIC permit from DEQ, because and in fact, we're still waiting to receive our draft new permit. My latest from Kevin Weberling is that hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'll see a draft of that permit, because I want to look at that language because it also has definitions of what can go into a UIC. But I think you're right. There's a discussion we could have there, because things like, so are you saying that, is this like flushing stuff out of a hydrant or something?
No, like, for example, especially, most of the time when we talk about this thing, it's dealing with crossings and the vertical separation that you need to have from crossings, but it could also be horizontal separation. So if you had a storm line that was parallel to a water line, it would also need to have 10 feet clear separation from that water line to meet the code. And
oh, you're talking about separation. I thought you were talking about, but wait a minute, you were just talking about, though, non-potable water.
Yeah, so non-potable water being stormwater or irrigation water or anything other than domestic potable water.
OAR 333-061 is what you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't have it up in front of me, but I want to say that it says sewer means sanitary sewer.
The whole thing, we come across this all the time because it's written in a water installation in like a perspective, right? It's talking about if you're installing water lines, then where are the other things? But so like it's kind of interpreted backwards, right? So then if you're putting in a non-potable water line, how does it interact? Water should be above the sewer. If not, go to the bells, see where this is, make sure there's no leakage, separations, encasement. Like there's kind of a series of things to protect contamination of your water line, basically, right?
Correct. And so as you get denser and you're running storm lines, it applies to new construction also. And so I guess I'm just saying we could look at that, or at least beat that up a little bit.
Yeah, we've, and that's where it's that language, you shall, you must, you should in there. So we take it as like a relatively best effort. We look at a lot of like context specific options in there. And so I don't know what's going on in private development as far as like exceptions and things to that. But yeah, no, that's a total, I mean, with the amount of infrastructure we have in the ground and the condensed right of ways and the developed, landscapings, we come across that all the time. It's something that it's really hard because it's an OAR, but it's got language in it that depending on what legal advice you're getting could be interpreted a little bit differently. And again, it's from the perspective of water installations.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is about horizontal and vertical separation from water lines to everything else.
Particularly horizontal, and then there's a similar one for vertical when you got some depths and separations, 3 zones you can look at.
Okay. Well, it looks like there might be a list of potential topics for review for the next update to standards.
Yeah, so this is specific to city standard 5.1.4 and the design standards.
Interesting.
do a lot different stuff. And as we get denser, it's already an issue on some things, but it's just something we should talk about.
Okay, great. I got that one down too. Thank you.
So one of the things we wanted to do today is just what we're talking about, collect any other interest areas, key questions from the group. I know, Lori, you also have a slide of longer horizon topics. This might be helpful maybe to run through briefly.
Yeah, because I mean, this might answer some people's questions, but so things coming up, I guess. So let's see what I got on here. Water rate study. So I anticipate a water rate study will get kicked off. It's going to be next fiscal year, so after July 1. And the water rate study, one of the things we really need to look at in terms of, these are drinking water rates, is the idea of conservation or tiered rates. So right now, of course, if you use more water, you pay more, but should you pay like even more after a certain amount? Should your unit cost for the water vary, particularly when we're talking about water that's being used for landscape irrigation, during the summer season? So that topic will definitely get you folks involved in, and so I think that'll probably be like a fall type discussion. And okay, then there will also be, and I mentioned this before, a stormwater rate study. So after we complete, well, actually kind of concurrent with completing the stormwater master plan, we'll kick off a stormwater rates study. So all of our work on the stormwater master plan in terms of recommended projects, the priority of those projects for implementation, the level of service discussion, those types of things, programmatic recommendations like, hey, implement some rain gauge stations or something like that. That has to then get incorporated into a rate study to see like, well, can we afford that and how, over what period of time? So that I anticipate will also be probably a fall discussion. We were just talking with Brian's comments about stormwater design standards updates. So I see that having two phases. One phase is what we can update and have to update to be in compliance with our stormwater permit for November of next year. So like a next year's round of city design standard updates. That'll include recommendations from the stormwater master plan exercise. And then after that, I definitely anticipate we need to update the Central Oregon Stormwater Manual. I have agreement on that. Redmond agrees, Sisters agrees. We just got to figure out how to do that. So that's a 1 year plus thing. There's, well, not only Deanna and I, but like Bronwyn here in the room, we've been talking about the fact that we have some issues between WaterWise and FireWise programs. And both of those are super important. WaterWise is what we've been talking about in terms of water conservation and water conserving landscapes. FireWise, of course, you have folks out there promoting landscapes that, will save your house from burning down. Also extremely important. But quite often the FireWise discussion seems to be simplified to like, oh, plant a whole bunch of grass around your house and water it like crazy, and that's the best thing. Well, that's not the best thing for water. So we've been having some discussions about, I guess, kind of even how to have the conversation, maybe through the auspices of the OSU Extension Service. So I see those discussions coming up maybe over the next year. And then Dan mentioned this, but water conservation program elements adjustments based on reviewing our data. We're going to be getting some help soon from the consultant who helped us put together our water management conservation plan, who came up with the projections of how much water we think we could save with all these different programs. And now we want to see like, well, how are we doing? Were there were their assumptions correct? Should we make adjustments to that program? And then also incorporate in that the fact that land use is changing, and so therefore water consumption and demand is changing. What does that look like, and how does that work into our program as well? So I see those things being a discussion starting this spring, and then, I mean, honestly, continuing for a long time. So those are things I could think of that you can anticipate seeing on agendas in the future. And then this was going to lead into what do you want to talk about? Does this cover it, or are there specific things you'd like to hear more about?
Well, we give folks a chance to gather thoughts. I just wanted to, I'll skip forward to this other slide. We'd put a feedback survey out, and this was a couple of the things that came through that. I just wanted to recognize the input we'd heard from UPAG members earlier this fall. And so definitely the densification development topic, that second bullet, is going to be part of ongoing conversations. But we also had that interest in stormwater capture and gray water and other creative ways to capture and use water, the urban forest compatibility with stormwater systems, the regional collaboration, certainly the COSM fits into that space, but also the ag, irrigation, and municipal water source protection relationship. So some other things, if anybody who contributed ideas wants to expand on those, or if these spark anything for the group.
Yeah, it'd be nice to understand some of these more about what folks meant exactly by that, so I could take a look into it.
Or if there's anything on this longer horizon list that is of most interest to you, I'd be curious to know that too.
I think a big thing, just, a challenge on the stormwater side and stormwater master plan is just the awareness of the rate structure right now. That's a huge thing. We're trying to just bring awareness to council. Rate increases are a huge sensitive topic here. But really, if we want to get serious about proper stormwater management and doing a lot of these things where something's gonna have to change on a revenue side of things. So I think that's just one of the big kind of threading lights of this whole thing, right? All these great ideas and planning and stuff, really it takes funding to make these things happen. So.
And stormwater rates are interesting because our rates are, if you do a comparison statewide, our rates are very low. Our rates are right now under $8 a month for single family residential. West side of Oregon, you're typically paying at least double that. And they're also dealing with more water. I mean, we have a lot of areas where the stormwater does a better job of taking care of itself, but there are still a lot of needs, and I think our level of service is pretty low. And what's very interesting is the city just implemented a transportation utility fee. And so, of course, those are all on the same utility bill. People consider it to be their water bill. And so I've started receiving some input from folks that I think the fact that they now have the transportation utility fee that they're paying, they're also looking at, why am I paying this rain tax?
I know, and they're complaining about the stormwater.
And they're saying, I shouldn't pay any because my site, I take care of all the stormwater on site, and I have to explain to people, well, that's the presumption. The presumption is you're taking care of your stormwater on site. What you're paying for is maintaining and operating the public stormwater system.
Still gotta buy groceries when it rains.
Yeah. But yeah. Kind of tough to explain that one, especially when they just saw their bill go up considerably because of the transportation fee.
Mm-hmm. and then citywide, this is a pretty big thing. Even on the water side of things, we have a stormwater master plan that was adopted in 2019 and had all these
14.
Water master plan, integrated water system master plan, and it says here's all these projects, here's when we're going to do them, here's how we're going to fund it by rate increases, this, and a bond, and then COVID happens, and that never recovered. So we're going for grants, and so across the board, we're behind on rates for everything, which then which one comes up, and so.
Yeah. That will be interesting.
Hey, really quick, Brian, back to your question about the hydrant spacing with UICs. I just found in the updated standard 644, they dropped that down to 25 feet.
Okay,
So
awesome.
6 foot.
Okay, I was just looking in the wrong spot. So
Yay.
I'll send you a little blurb here on the separation thing we talked about in just a moment.
Thank you.
All right, so we've got a little time left. We just want to check in with everybody. So we can just go around the room if there's a takeaway from this year, a question that you still have on your mind that you'd love to bring forward in future meetings, conversations, anything you want to reflect on about being part of this group, a topic that you'd like to put on the calendar for next year. This is just a chance to hear from everybody. One last kind of set of final thoughts. So I will stop sharing here. And if anybody is willing to kick us off.
Should I throw a tennis ball around? I can throw it at the screen to catch it and then give an answer.
Mike, was that you?
You can hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I've been having a lot of issues with I'm like on the phone trying to do this. Sorry. Well, going back to those last slides, I am really interested in seeing how the water conservation program is doing, over the next year, and also the interplay between the FireWise guidelines and the water conservation, because we do see that, at least in our industry and in our office, as those two guidelines really contradict each other and makes it pretty tough.
Great,
Cool.
That's helpful. Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
And then Kristen, since she would be willing to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. I think the water conservation piece of all this is really critical. And then also the WaterWise and FireWise coordination for saying two different things doesn't really help us move forward. And then also the rates. I think I'm having a lot of conversations in other groups and other governments that are saying, like, we haven't increased our rates to cover what we need to do in a long time. Like, it's been kind of delayed. And I think I was reflecting on the meetings throughout 2024 and just appreciating, like, the overall vision for better technology, new methods, green infrastructure, climate forecasting, and all of these goals that the city has, which are, I think, really great values and aligned with the people that live here. And unfortunately, that costs money. So
Yeah.
Looking at rate changes, I think, will be an interesting topic too.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I have
Kristen.
just a question. It might be a question more for Brian, but when he was talking earlier, since this is the utilities advisory group, at least it was, there's always a conflict between utilities being run in the right of way and our street trees being planted right on top of them. And I'm just curious if there's anything in any code that could be changed to say, or if it's feasible to run utilities under the sidewalk so we could reduce those conflicts, because that also is a contradiction in the code of needing and wanting street trees, but then you got utilities running down that 5-foot strip. Makes it kind of tough.
Yeah, that was my submission on the previous slide. It was the urban forestry compatibility, because like they just passed the tree code, and part of that is like large tree conservation and preservation, but there's also a mitigation fund that's going towards like a tree fund, basically, to plant trees throughout the rest of the city. And my understanding, I don't know if this is necessarily the case. I think it might be still in the works, but my understanding is that a lot of those trees are going to be planted on public property, and very likely that will be the right of way too
Mm-hmm.
throughout the city. So I think just being aware that that is a goal for the city is to increase the urban tree canopy and very likely through right of way trees. Just figuring out how to do that in a way that doesn't impact our stormwater and
Mm-hmm.
other systems under the right of way.
Being able to successfully plant trees.
Yeah. Lori, have you heard, I heard rumors they're looking to advertise for a city.
Forester, it's been advertised for a
Forester.
couple of months. I don't
Okay.
know. I'm assuming they're probably doing a review right now of who's submitted applications, but it was put out, I'm gonna say like 6 weeks ago or something. So it's a city urban forester. They're gonna work for the community development department, but they're gonna work across departments. And so that's to help with implementation of the new tree code. It's to help, I'm sure they'll be helping to manage the Tree City USA designation. They'll probably help with the use of the fee in lieu dollars collected for when we allow people to cut down trees and collect money from them. And probably other stuff. A whole bunch of us came up with a long list of things that this person could do, which are probably more than one person can do. And there was a lot of discussion about which department they should reside in. So I was like, we'd love to have them in our department. And transportation said the same thing.
Yeah.
But community development won that argument.
Well, and then my ignorance on the tree code, that's particularly with private, right? That tree code was
Well,
specific, but
There's
then
two
it has
parts
impacts
to it.
public planting.
Yeah, so the tree code had kind of two parts. So one part was about private property development and being able to cut down trees and which ones and how much and all of that. And then the other part was about street trees and doing some clarifications on street trees. And attached to that was our right-of-way landscape code that Dan's implementing, which is the no more grass in the right-of-way.
The code
Gotta
that's been there
have-
for a long time that no one's really been paying attention
The
to.
one that was, we had standards in our engineering standards and didn't understand that we couldn't implement them for new development because we didn't have it in city code too.
Oh,
And so we had to
Technicalities.
create code to say, yes,
Code
yes, do this in the right of way.
okay.
Yeah, we learned a lot. And it was very long and painful, but we got it in place.
Scrubs human.
I wonder if
All
we
those
do
things
get this
fit together.
urban forester, like, it seems like a pretty good first introduction with them. Like, here's some practical challenges that we have as far as like actually building these.
Yeah, maybe it'd be fun to have them come to this meeting.
I think it would, yeah.
Yeah, like that. Right. Yeah, when they're brand new and they still have time on their plate.
Yeah, you lock that schedule in as soon as you can.
Okay, I wrote that one down.
All right, so congestion on the right of way. Stephanie Bronwyn, any thoughts that either you want to share?
I could kind of jump in related to the code discussion, because we've come up against like several code topics already.
Mhm.
But any opportunity to have, for multiple people to have input on code development, I think is super helpful, because a lot of times there's one intent, but then either how the code gets written or implemented can vary. So just having the way different people interact with the code, being able to weigh in on that is really helpful. I mean, and I've learned a lot too about different aspects of the code that I don't interact with so much.
Mhm.
But I think that can help make better code for more people when you have that input. So appreciate that opportunity. Would love to see more of that when it comes up.
Okay.
And just having, I think, being able to like talk with folks in general. I feel like each of us have probably had other interactions outside of this group that stemmed from like getting to know each other in this group that have benefited our work. So
Mhm.
Like, did you sit with Pauline to like write all those? Because she's like our primary code
Right.
writer, right?
Yeah, so all the ideas, all the drafts, all the, everything we're proposing gets run through her to kind of develop the final version of that.
Mhm.
But a lot
You
of
guys
it,
feed all the content. She,
yeah, and a lot of it was just figuring out with other groups, what is the process in planning versus building versus engineering, and like where the stop gaps, where the pinch points with this group. So yeah, I mean, it was almost developing a new process in a lot of ways for some groups, even though some of that language was already existing. And then, yeah, Pauline would refine that into the code language.
Yeah, as we learned, I mean, there's writing new code, which is great, but unless it's actually implementable, it's not really of much use. And that was the more detailed undertaking, was figuring out, just kind of like what Bronwyn was saying too, like, how will this impact different groups? How does this work with our city view permitting system? How do we properly trigger it associated with all the other things we make developers have to live under, all the different rules?
Yeah, do we need to change existing code to make this process work? Are there contradictions? Like, I mean, there's so much.
Oh, it's so complicated.
Is there a central, like, so say, like with your landscape code, if someone's implementing it and they're like, oh, I'm struggling with this aspect, is there like a centralized process for folks, or is it really like find someone you know and talk to them and hope that they convey it to another person? Or is there like an actual way for folks, whether, you know, it's with like code that you're specifically working on or within another department in the city, for like consideration in future updates?
I think, you know, for making future changes, I think, like you mentioned, having this group is great, because otherwise you're starting with, you know, probably someone in the initial process and trying to work through a planner or somebody to get to the right person. So, I mean, that's where these groups can be helpful in facilitating some of that. You know, we can have it on a docket for the next, you know, standards change or standards update. Other than that, I think that the only thing I'm familiar with, not on so much on the code, but on the standards, is when you have those public submissions for standards changes.
Yeah, usually there's a full public process.
Yeah.
But I think also one of the places we learn things a lot is so for instance, Dan could talk about how, you know, his group, even though he's in the water services department, his group are the folks that are like reviewing related to this new right-of-way landscape code. So the planners receive an application, and at the right point, Dan's group gets triggered to review plans or to conduct inspections. And his group will get the phone calls, even like from our planners, saying, we have this question that has come to us. We don't know how to deal with it. Can you help?
Yeah. So, I mean, for instance, in that process, we would hope that they would, you know, we've got this development checklist we provide them. It goes in their condition. So when they apply for their permit, they know who to contact, right? If they have questions. We prefer, you know, they contact us directly, right? We can set them up with the information they need to know to submit that application and get it passed the first time. But the way that application process is, it definitely has to go to a planner first, right? For this first initial review. So there's a little bit of, you know, that, okay, well, now we need to sit with the planners and say, you know, here's the things we want you to check for. You know, that raises some questions when things, you know, development varies widely, right? And so then they might call us in that instance and say, hey, look at this application or this permit number, you know, what do you want us to do? So we're trying to make it as seamless as possible.
But also bring the expertise to bear.
Right. So we're trying to bring that to fill those gaps in expertise or help with decisions to keep things moving smoothly.
Landscape stuff's difficult because we do not have many people at the city who have any expertise in landscape. We have no landscape architects.
I was gonna say, maybe you should hire a landscape architect.
I know.
That would be nice.
When I was city engineer at Tigard, I had a landscape architect working for me. It was awesome.
Sure.
And she was wonderful in helping to deal with development issues as well as manage capital projects. But we don't have that at this point. I think our first start will be, I'm hopeful that the urban forester we hire has a landscape architecture background. I helped put together the job description because at first they were just thinking of like an arborist, and I'm like, a lot of people can become an arborist. It's not that hard. It's what we really want is some deeper expertise in that. And to me, that really felt like landscape architecture.
Hmm.
And so we grabbed a job description from the city of Hillsborough and kind of used that as a template for this.
I think part of that issue is we've, traditionally looked at landscapes as like a normal development process of, a street tree every 35 feet and it goes here and, no matter what, and not as much thought to, there's a lot of variation within landscape.
Yeah.
You're creating an environment. And so there's a lot of things that aren't like a traditional engineering or development product that need to be considered, like planning over infrastructure or, site clearances and speeds on different streets and how close do you plant those trees and, tree canopy expectations. But, we've got, parking lot cameras that our parking folks use that now can't see certain parking lot, stalls. And so it's like all these things, I think having that different perspective of someone from the landscape arena would help. And I think we're slowly getting there, but it's just, it's a lot of conversation.
So a lot of questions come to Dan's group because he's the one group in the city that has some landscape expertise.
And we tried a little bit, like on Newport, like we tried to do these like amended soils where I took like drain rock and blended it with topsoil.
Structural soils,
but we were shooting from the hip. I was just like pulling articles from Seattle and Portland and places, and we're like, I think it's worth it. Let's give it a try. But I don't have any background in,
At least you were looking.
Well, but we're trying. But like, if we could get somebody with that, I think then maybe, we can get a better program for establishing vertical root growth, which may not have so many conflicts with our congested right-of-ways and utilities and just
sidewalks that
have like appropriate soils, that we're not like just putting 3/4- to 97% compaction.
Stormwater trees, they're gonna happen. Before I retire, there's gonna be a stormwater
Like it's like right there. Like all these things are like, we're like circling the drain with this stuff. And it's like, just getting that right person that's like, I know this, and this is what we should do, and having that confidence, I'm hoping.
Okay, so I'm gonna cut this. We have like 4 minutes left in the meeting. I don't know, did anybody else have any input, things you're interested in, things you'd like to know more about, things that drive you nuts, before we end this meeting?
Stephanie, what do you got for us?
I was just excited about the Firewise versus the Waterwise. I've been seeing particular issues with contradictions for those, specifically in our HOA in our neighborhood. We've got retired firefighters on the one end of the spectrum, like, wanting, the Firewise stuff, and then we have the other group in our neighborhood contacting Dan about turf removal and water conservation. And so I think that seeing those two things come together are going to be really useful, I think, in the big picture in some of these areas. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think we're really seeing, this is good. Thank you, because we're seeing traction on this topic. Dan and I were thinking this was an important topic. I appreciate hearing from more. Because I was even trying to say, gosh, can we push on the legislature and the water caucus and try to have them wouldn't be a lot of money, throw some money at OSU Extension to develop more coordinated materials between the two would be so awesome. So great, appreciate it.
And Brian, anything else that you wanted to add? I think you're our last kind of around the room check-in.
Well, there's Pablo. DEQ want to say anything?
Pablo shared some notes in the chat.
Oh, did he? I'm sorry, I didn't look at the chat.
I don't know if there's anything we can do. As stormwater goes and we manage in certain parts of the city, we're going to have to deal with 2-year time of travel things, where we can't do any UICs within 2-year time of travel. And so I guess maybe standardizing an approach in those areas or really understanding those 2-year time of travel areas from public drinking water wells, or if there's some jurisdictions I see it's like from a public drinking water well, and others it's from, I think UIC rules are really any well whatsoever. So I'm clarifying that maybe.
Mm-hmm.
That's especially important as you work in the UGB expansion areas on the fringe where there's tons of wells. But there are
Yes.
parts of town that have significant 2-year time of travel limitations. So
Yes. And just as a quick, right now what we're looking at is like keeping the 2-year time of travel for the public, municipal drinking water wells. So that'd be like City of Bend, Avion. I'm trying to think if any of theirs are inside the city. For other private wells, we're looking at reducing that restriction from 500 feet to 100 feet. So I think that will help out, Brian, with that.
Yep, that'll definitely help out. And then, what is the strategies there? Are we using, like you said, regional facilities, ponds? Right now it's pretty much any surface water infiltration facility, but.
Okay.
Is there, sorry to ask you just a question, is there a time frame for that radius reduction?
Yeah, we're hoping to, so I'm looking to the next update of the city's engineering standards, which they should be collecting that information, as I understand it, in the spring for hopefully a late spring to summer implementation. I'm not going to hold my breath on that, but that's my hope. We need to get these in place. So if that's not going to happen, then I might look to asking for a small update just for this topic.
All right, so I know we're right at the end here. Real quick, we heard a little bit that our January schedule is subject to change. So right now, everybody should have January 8th, the second Wednesday on your calendar. You'll probably hear in the next week if that's going to stick or not. And then our next meeting, which is not on the calendar yet, but it would be the first Wednesday of February, which is the 5th, and also a stormwater master plan topic.
And I will get those other invites out for everybody's calendars. I'll do them at least through June.
So you'll probably get some scheduling communications for this group moving forward. If there's other kind of thoughts that you want to share about topics, questions you'd love to dig into next year. Pablo shared some compliments for the city team, these meetings and this group. These meetings are really great and appreciate the group and the work. So cheers and kudos to everybody for the conversation. And I think that closes us out.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have great holidays, and we'll see you next year.
Yes.
Thank you.
In 2025. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.